We will go ahead and get started. And Dave, if you would please initiate the recording if you haven't already. We are going to record this call so that you guys can have it in the event you want to share it with your other staff who took part in the Targeted Summer Learning Initiative, and also just so that you have it there to refer back to as needed. I think we all know each other here, but I'll introduce myself real quickly. I'm Dr. Candace Ferguson, Project Director for the 21st CCLC NTAC, and we're so happy to be here with you all today. Unfortunately, Michelle, you guys would probably know this better than me, but Michelle, on the island that she lives in out there in North Carolina, they are having some flooding and they are out of their electricity, out of their internet. And so if she gets reconnected today, she will join us, which I hope she can because she played a big part in supporting both Tyshawn and Mr. Parker, your group there at Zion. So hopefully she will be able to join us. But we are certainly glad that you are all here. We wanted to do this kind of culminating event for a couple of reasons, and I'll go over the agenda here in a minute, but just wanted to give folks the opportunity to introduce yourselves as well, because we do have both of our program participants here that are joining us today in this kind of culminating event celebration. So Susan and Dr. Hamilton, I know you know the folks, but if you want to say hi, and then I'll turn it over to our participants.
Sure. Hey, Tyshawn. Hey, Mr. Parker. I'm glad you guys were able to hop on today, and I'm looking forward to getting some feedback from NTAC about this whole process, and I know you guys are too. So thanks again for taking time to get on today.
And without further ado, I'm Darren Hamilton, and I'm so glad to be here, and I appreciate the work that 21st CCLC NTAC has done, and I hope we continue that partnership.
Absolutely. And Mr. Parker, just because you're first on my list, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're from in the program? Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Yeah, I'm Charles Parker, the future director of Zion House Learning Center in the big town of Aden, North Carolina. Of course, we're all excited to just be here with you all today.
Wonderful. And Tyshawn, there you are.
Hello, hello. My name is again Tyshawn Winter. I'm the program director for Freedom Lab, hosted by Freedom Within Walls, out here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Nice to see you, Tyshawn.
Same.
And then from our team, Jessica and Dave, y'all want to say hello real quick?
Hi, Jessica Navarro. I am a TA liaison here with NTAC, and I know it's been lots of great memories from our visits this summer, so good to see you all again.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave McConnell. I'm the Technical Assistance Team Lead here with the NTAC. It's good to see you all again. Thanks for all of your participation over the past year. It's been really helpful for us. It's been nice to get out and see some programs too, which we don't always get to do in our role. So good to have you all with us today.
Thank you, Dave. And he's right. We love to come out and get out, and just see the sites and engage with the students, engage with the staff. And so we'll be sharing a little bit about our experiences there this summer with you all. So today we just kind of want to, as I mentioned, close the loop on summer. I know we all met, my goodness, I think it was back in July. I don't know, maybe it was May or June, that we met to kind of talk about the importance of continuous improvement, kind of that part of the planner, tab 13. And we realized when we did that, it was certainly before we came out to visit you all on the site. And so we wanted to really kind of have this kind of part 2 of that continuous improvement conversation, because really it was in conversations while we were there with you all that we had, especially like with Susan and with Dr. Hamilton, about the importance of kind of coming back together and really focusing in on those outcomes. And of course, we also want to celebrate what you all did. So we'll be doing a little bit of that as well. So just want to kind of, like I said, close the loop on summer and really kind of think about what we can use from what you all learned in the initiative to help really plan out, not just next summer, but to plan out, potentially even your fall programs that I'm sure are all underway now. So this is our agenda today. And really, we are going to have time for conversation with each of you. We're going to be asking you some questions. We're going to be asking you to engage. So please feel free to come off mute at any point, share information as we go through, especially as we talk about celebrating some of those successes, because I think that's going to be absolutely critical. But also we want to reflect. So we're going to go back and we're going to look at the summer learning planner for our programs. If you could have your planner up, it might be helpful to tab 13. That's the continuous improvement planner or part of the planner. So go ahead and take a minute to get that open. We're going to talk through it as well. And really what we want to focus on, none of this is a gotcha. None of this is, to kind of tell you what went wrong. And, really the purpose of today is to take what we learned from participating in this initiative and using that data to really drive, as I mentioned, next summer, but also thinking about, where we are right now in planning and what elements of what you learned in the summer learning process that you can take with you into that planning. And then towards the end, I will share a little bit of an update on the impact stories that we're doing as part of the NTAC's evaluation. So I'm excited to share those impact stories and kind of what you all as programs can do to use them to help share your stories, not just of your programs, but of really the successful programs that you all implemented this summer. So before we kind of celebrate, I want to just kind of take you back through this pathway of summer excellence. This wheel, if you will, should look very familiar to you all, especially those that were kind of embedded in the process throughout this summer. But just kind of taking you back and again, reflecting on the important elements of the targeted summer learning initiative. We really started, and we'll go through a timeline next, but if you just kind of think about these elements, we really started having this conversation sometime last fall with each of you, where we started talking about assembling your program team and how critical it was to have a good balance of not too many people on that planning team, right? But having the people that you needed at the table to really help you plan and implement your program. So that was the first thing, was building that strong team. The next thing we dove into was all about needs assessment. And that is critical where, we had you kind of look at your data to really determine what was standing out to you that you really wanted and needed to focus on for your students for summer learning, for your summer learning programs. But alongside that, we also took a look at assets that you had and did some of that asset mapping because we wanted to be really intentional about using your 21st CCLC assets for high quality programming, but also taking a look at some of those other assets that you had in place so that you didn't necessarily have to duplicate some of those efforts. The third thing we did was we really dove into the logic models. And that is something that you all, just based on some conversations that we've had, that you all really appreciated was taking the time to focus on the logic model, to really visualize what you wanted your program to look like, and then kind of thinking through all of those steps. So the inputs, the outputs, the measures that you were going to be focusing on, and using that logic model before we did anything else. And I think, we've talked about this a lot, but how difficult it is to stop and think logically about what it is that you envision for your program, because we get so ready to start diving into those logistics. That's where everybody wants to go is the actual planning. But through this initiative, we really stopped and wanted you all to be thoughtful about what you wanted your program to look like. And then again, as I mentioned, of course, then we dove into those logistics. So your space and looking at your budget and looking at your schedule and all of the nitty gritty that comes, into actually running the program. And then we talked about intentional activity design and recruitment, intentional student recruitment. Those two go hand in hand. But what we really wanted you all to do was be thoughtful about, once you had your needs determined, what specifically were you going to focus on? And how were you going to design those activities in a way that they were not only engaging for students, but they were engaging to the right students. So for example, if you knew you had a focus on reading and math, which you both did, both of your programs did, then we wanted to make sure that we were recruiting the right students who needed additional support in reading and math. So that, you're very focused not only on your needs, but then on the data that you are collecting in order to support these students. And then last but not least, we talked about continuous improvement and really doing, for sure, two things out of this is one is to look back at your successes and figure out and determine what went really, really well. Do that, deep reflection and determine what went really, really well, and then what could have gone better. And using all of that information to help you plan, for your future summer, as I mentioned, or your regular program planning. And then I promise you, we are going to get to the celebration. But before we do that, just kind of wanted to take a quick trip down memory lane of when this all started and just to kind of level set and give you all, kind of the reminder of when we started this and why. So the Targeted Summer Learning Initiative was done through a supplemental grant that the NTAC received from the Department of Ed. And we kicked off initially doing all the planning with your state leaders. So we were working with Dr. Hamilton, we were working with Susan and Wendy and all of the state office who have been, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, you guys have been such fantastic partners at the state level to not only let us come in and work with you all and support you as needed, but also to work with your programs. So we started having these conversations with the state about who might be the best fit for this particular initiative. We talked through at a high level what that summer learning planning process was, what it would entail, the level of effort that it would entail from the programs. And so again, we kind of started having these conversations in the summer of last year. And then that really continued on, working with these two programs, identifying these two programs. So by the time we got to you all, there had already been a lot of work that went into place about who we were going to work with. And then we were able to start diving in. So it was around the fall or December when we really started having these series of webinars. So there were 5 webinars that we started again in December and taking you through July to help support the work that we just kind of talked about in that summer learning wheel. Another part of this initiative that I think was really critical was having somebody, a TA coach, Michelle, there and available for you all at the site level to help, walk you through the different stages of summer planning. And then of course, we always have our senior TA liaison, Hillary, who works closely with your state level staff, again, to not only talk about needs, but talk about progress. And then what we were talking about earlier, most of us on this team, Jessica, myself, Dave, we were all there this summer at your site. So we were there July 23rd and 24th to do the program observation. So taking into account all of the work that you did and being there to actually see it in implementation. And then I think it was the week after that, maybe a week and a half after that, we came back out and presented at the summer conference that you all had there in North Carolina, and sharing what you all learned through this process and letting other folks in the state kind of hear all about the initiative itself, but your participation in that. So that is just kind of a little walkthrough, trip down memory lane in the Summer Learning Initiative. But now we definitely, as I said, want to take some time to celebrate you all, because as I said, this is not something that we stop to do. And it's not because we don't want to. I honestly think it's because we just, A, we're so busy, and B, we get so caught up in the next thing that we have to go do that we stop or we don't stop and celebrate what you did. So again, we are going to, kind of practice what we preach and not only celebrate you all for your accomplishments, and we have a couple of little treats for you here in a minute. But we want to start this really by hearing from you all. So Mr. Parker, from Tyshawn, and then of course from the state level staff, would love to just hear about what were some of the big things you felt now that we're post summer? What were some of the things that you felt that you want to share and celebrate with us? Whether that was in your, the planning part of this process, your actual implementation, um, something that has to do with your staff, with your students. What is, one or two things that that you can share with us in this celebration? Mr. Parker, I'm gonna come to you again. You're the first one I see on my list, so.
Okay. Yeah, first of all, I was pretty much excited just to get involved because this was something totally new. The process itself, just to know, I mean, it was explained extremely well, the diagram itself, and actually, that was exciting. The there was no problem in recruiting. Uh, we definitely having a problem with that. Everyone seemed to get on board with that. I very excited with the kids, the way that they just embraced this idea because I saw this as an innovative thing, but also something that is a lasting thing. I love that. I love it because it was I just saw it as something different, but at the same time it was something that was very neat for in our program. I was definitely excited with the participation from our parents. I was well pleased with the staff participation, and of course with the overall. And we definitely appreciate your support, the guidance, and how to actually do these things. So that's basically it. Again, you're still excited about that. I also sat down after everything was over and looked at it. When you're planning, like doing lesson plans, you have a good lesson plan and you may look at it as though it's perfect, but then after everything is over, we thought of ways how we can, build upon what we've done from that project itself.
I love that too. And, one of the things that we've heard is, and we all know this, but your best laid plans, right? The summer learning planner gives you kind of the tool to be able to think big picture and broadly about what your best laid plan is supposed to look like. But we also know that life happens in between, and you don't always get to fulfill that plan 100%, but it's certainly in how you pivot. I hate to use that word because I feel like it's overused, especially in education, but educators are known for having to pivot at the last minute, having to pivot constantly when situations arise. And I think that's part of, it's just part of the process. And we understand that that's going to happen, that our best laid plans don't always work out exactly as we had intended them to, but it's how you pivot and how you, take from that experience and you move on and you make improvements. So thank you so much for sharing that. Tyshawn, over to you. What were some successes that you all had that you'd like to celebrate?
Awesome. Yeah, I think overall this was a really amazing process, especially for us as a new program. It really gave us an opportunity to lay out exactly where we needed to go and how to get there. And it just really helped to crystallize things for me. I'm a very hands-on visual type processor. And so talking about things at a high level, it works, but I really need to be able to see it. And this process, having the summer learning planner, having the TA meetings really helped me to be able to visualize exactly what we needed to do. And then it made it possible for me to share that vision with my team. And so being able to go back and say like, hey, here's some of the support that we've been getting. Here are some of the things that we're going to be implementing. Why don't we try this? Why don't we try going in this direction? Why don't we try tweaking things a little bit here and there, going back to that continuous improvement that we were talking about? And I think it really made our program a lot better than it would have been otherwise, especially thinking about it so early. At some points, it was like, this is too early. I'm just trying to get through the week, and you want me to talk about several months from now. But I think having that like recurring conversation was actually really good, because it's like, hey, even though it's a while away, if you start planning now, if you start making the steps, taking the steps rather to get things done now, it'll run so much more smoothly when it's actually time to do it. And I think it did run a lot more smoothly than it would have, because we were able to work through it and to make all of these plans in advance. So thank you all for your support. Thank you all for just this amazing opportunity.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing that too, especially about that perspective of being a new program, because I know this is something that we talked with Susan and Dr. Hamilton and the team about. Was originally, even when we went into this, we thought, we needed to have programs who have been doing this for a while. We didn't necessarily, we said, no brand new programs, because they have too much on their plate. They have a lot going on already. Tyshawn, kind of as you said, just, I'm worried about this week. I'm not thinking 3 or 4 months down the line. But part of what those conversations we had with the state level staff was, hey, maybe we should consider a new program, because what that actually does is it sets the stage up front from year one. And not just on the importance of summer planning, right? That is important, but because it's a new program, you have so much already that you're still trying to get underway. But one thing I know that they wanted, and we completely agreed with after having these conversations with them, was that if you take the steps and you kind of see the steps of just high quality program planning, if you see that up front from the beginning of the program, then think about where you'll be in 3 to 5 years, however long your programs operate. And so, just again, Dr. Hamilton, I know you come off mute. I'm sure you want to add to that, but that was on our part a learning lesson, that we were thankful to have these conversations with the state to see it from their perspective, to kind of change our criteria a little bit. Dr. Hamilton, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, no, I was
Okay.
just waiting to celebrate some things.
All right, well, celebrate away then. I'll turn it over to you guys if there's anything additionally that you wanted to add on top of that.
Yeah, so from the state level, oftentimes we don't ever get a chance to give the leadership flowers. And so at this time, it really means a lot to me to lift Susan Brigman, because with her vision and her unwavering support, she allowed this to take place, particularly since I kind of volunteered to have a pilot program. And so I really thank her for that. And she's really, I can't even use words to describe her support, but her vision and her hands-on when she even came out to visit the site. The one thing I take away from that is, and you could take some kudos from that, Tyshawn, is when she talked about your site coordinator, you put the right people in the right place. And your teachers, I watch those men, and I lift those men, because we see a dearth of men working in the educational fields. And so I watched them work with the kids, and those kids were engaged. And so Tyshawn and Tara were out at the time, but the program did run. And what I love, my favorite word begins with F, and that's fidelity. And when I saw the site coordinator say, "Oh, I don't know this and I don't know that," she stayed right in her lane, in which she was very skilled at doing, working with the parents, working with the teachers, knowing where the classes were, being able to take us around. And so, if anything that we have to be intentional about is putting the right people in the right place, working with the kids, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that the kids don't have learning loss. And then lastly, I just want to always talk about 21st CCLC NTAC team. You all have been a tremendous partner. Of course, I work with others more than, the wide body, but, the folks that I work with, they're always a phone call away, Teams call away, and they just do a lot to help provide professional development, technical assistance, and support for us from a global lens. And so thank you all for that. And that's all I have.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And two, I agree. For us, it was so nice to be out there on site with your leadership team, in addition to with your site level staff. Like that was just so critical. And even at the site level, we were able to be like with Mr. Parker. I know, Tyshawn, we didn't get to see you because you were on vacation, and I'm sure it was a very well-deserved vacation. But you could see that, like just being able to interact with your staff, with the state level staff was hugely beneficial to us because not only does it build relationships, but more so speaking kind of to the program level team here at the site level, your state staff is like really has always been open and willing to have other people come in and help support them. And we've always just found that as, North Carolina has been a great partner since the beginning of the NTAC, and we hope that that will continue because you guys are not afraid to try stuff out with us either. You piloted the ITAP with us in year one, which is, come so far from where we started to where we are. But what that did was it gave us the opportunity to really sit next to you and say, what are your needs? What are your sub-grantee needs? Where can we support you? Where can we help fill in any of the gaps that you may have, or just do anything extra that you don't necessarily have the time and the resources to do? And that's what we need at this national level to really understand what's going on in states and at the local level to be able to provide you all continued technical assistance and support. And so I don't know that we've shared this yet widely, but the NTAC, just like you all were funded for next year, the NTAC was also funded for next year. So in year three
Yay.
of our grant, we're so excited. But that's for you all to know that we are here to support you into the next year as well. So
Candace, we really appreciate y'all's support, and we don't mind being the guinea pig because I think we're always looking to help our programs be better. And now one of the things that, I've stressed when we've been meeting with our sub-grantees is that now is the time for us to be showing, the nation that 21st century needs to be here, and we need it. We need quality after school programming for our students. And I think this pilot has really strengthened the summer programming at these two sites. And we were so excited with the progress and what we've seen with this. Now Intact is going to be providing our monthly PD for us this upcoming year. And so we're excited about that to roll out something kind of similar to what you all just did with these two programs, but a little more larger scale even than what they have been able to experience. I think now you all are tweaking everything, and I think our entire group of sub-grantees are going to benefit tremendously from having you present each month that consistency. And like Darren loves the word fidelity, we're gonna keep these programs moving in the right direction, and we truly do appreciate your support, and we are very excited that you were refunded too. So
thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so excited and looking forward to continuing that work with you, as you said, on a grand scale. And you're right, I cannot stress, and any of us, we all know now moving forward, 21st Century was funded this year, thankfully, after that short pause, but the NTAC was funded again to even support that. And that is not something that we've seen generally across the board. But it speaks to the level of voice that people out there in the field out there, and they spoke about the importance of this program. And you're right, Susan, we have got to really showcase what these programs can do.
We need to,
moving on.
We have to tell our story, now more than ever.
That's right.
We truly are excited about this upcoming year. Wendy, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything. I know you worked a lot with Zion House this year and Mr. Parker and helped them navigate through a lot of challenges. So,
well, I just wanted to praise their just consistent effort. it took a lot of effort to get through that first year, and then to have the planning for the summer. I honestly, I really think it helped them a lot to have a structure, because there were some strong transitions that took place within the year. And I believe the support that you all provided was absolutely on target. And I think just stepping through this process has helped everybody learn a little more about communicating at all levels. So.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Thanks for joining us too. And yeah, thank you for adding that. I think one thing that this does, and even just being a part of the pilot, but it does show you that communication that's needed at all levels, right? Because as we said earlier, things aren't always going to go as planned, but how do we respond to those things that may come up? And I agree. I think I know Michelle worked with Mr. Parker and the team there at Zion and kind of worked through some of the staffing challenges. And it was so seamless when we got there. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too, when we celebrate some of the successes and the glows and the grows that we call them. But you could just tell like it was so cohesive, and the messaging that happened from top down about the importance of not just the initiative, but the planning, the planning that had taken place was so critical. So in the continued celebration of celebrating you, we do want to let you know that we're going to be sending you all a certificate of achievement for completing the Summer Learning Initiative. So please be on the lookout for that. I don't know if people actually even still print certificates of achievement, but it's one of those things that if you do print it, it will be nice to have it up on your wall, because you should celebrate and just kind of be reminded of what you did and and all the work and the effort that you put into this. So look out for that coming your way soon. And before we kind of move on to this next celebration, I want to start by saying, Tyshawn, I know we didn't get a chance to meet you in person, and we didn't have the opportunity to take pictures or videos of your program while we were there, because we didn't honestly feel like we could do that without you being there. And so we promise at some point, if we come back, if you invite us back, we'll do the same for you. But I want to share this video that we put together for the folks at Zion, and just kind of to show you what you all did as it was reflected back to us. So Dave, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Hopefully everything will work, but let's see. Uh-oh, did that stop? There we go. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dave, for playing that. And we will be happy to send this to you guys. So you have the video as well, so you can share it with folks so that you can show it at the state level. We just thought it kind of truly reflected, everything that we saw when we were there, and just certainly brought lots of good memories back for us. Okay, so we are going to shift gears a little bit. I did see Michelle. I don't know, Michelle, if you can, if you're just on the phone, or if you want to say hi, if you can hear us, or anything you want to share.
Yeah,
That you
I
could
can
join
hear
us.
it too. I'm on the phone. I can't be on video. It won't let me. I tried.
No worries.
But yes, I just wanted to thank everybody. The video almost makes me cry because I know how hard everyone worked this summer, and it was really a pleasure to work with everybody throughout the initiative. So my wonderful colleagues are helping me out. I said, I can't believe I'm missing the best webinar that we are having, the celebration. I was like, of all of them, but I can see, I just can't get on the video.
Okay, cool. Well, chime in at any point. I'm glad you were able to join us. And I also saw Miss Boston was here and joining us as well. So nice to welcome you also. Anything that you wanted to share about your experience or celebration?
Um, Good afternoon. Yeah, so I think that um as someone who's worked with 21st Century for over 10 years, the planner was very helpful with putting everything in one place. I think I've shared that with the team as well. Just remembering, the goals that we're trying to make throughout the school year and how that actually impacts the summer. It was helpful for it to be in one place. And I know I said it before, at first I was like, oh my gosh, it's something else for me to do. It's another planner. But then as I went through it, it was like, okay, we already have this information. This is a way to organize it and it to actually help you with what you're going to be doing for the summer, as well as helping you as a program director to delegate. So delegate who needs to be doing X, Y, Z in advance, and it really just puts it all in one place. So I did appreciate that part of the actual planner. Love the video. I was kind of running around that day, so I didn't get to see all of those great moments. So it was good to look back and see what the kids were actually doing. But the planner is definitely something that is useful, certainly for those that are new with 21st Century, as well as those who have been working with the program for a while. Like I said, another tool to put everything in place, and then it flowed kind of, what's my wording here? It flowed as an actual planning tool. So it wasn't all over the place, and it went in order from start to finish. Like when you get down there to like your staffing needs and then your budget, it really helped you plan for the summer. So I did like that. It did keep everything organized.
Well, and you did such a great job coming in the time that you did to get the program up and running. As you said, I know we had some conversations about how it was helpful for you to have something already in place and not have to pull it together or start from scratch. And you did such a fantastic job of doing that in the time that you had, especially. And you can see that reflected. I know you said you were running around, but we could see that reflected in how well and how smoothly things ran when we were there. So. Thank you all for that. I did want to just add too quickly, y'all have been so nice and complimentary about the tools and the resources, but we will be asking you, like, share it all. So at the end of this, we're going to share a feedback link with you. If there's any way we can enhance these tools, that's also something that's as critical about this whole process. And it's timely now that we kind of shift our conversation to continuous improvement. And when we originally started talking about having this last webinar event, it was really with a conversation that we had with Susan and Dr. Hamilton when we were in at Freedom about like what next, right? What is there a way we're going to kind of recap what they learned and looking specifically at the data? going back to, you know, those original planning objectives and where are we now with our outcomes. So this is really kind of shifting gears. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to kind of walk us through and level set, because we really do want to dive in now to the continuous improvement piece. So Jessica?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, some of this, as Candace mentioned, right, getting that feedback and understanding about how those tools or the process, any processes that can be improved, really helps us in our continuous improvement efforts, right? So as we think about being able to expand this work, potentially share some of these resources with other states, other programs, what would be really beneficial? So yes, like Candace said, we'd love y'all's feedback on that when we get to that point. So what does continuous improvement look like in summer learning programs? We know that, you know, using that data, any feedback that you capture throughout that for making those program adjustments, as well as the lessons you may learn that can help future planning as well. So what worked well? What were some things we could do different? The feedback, we talked a lot about at both sites about the informal versus the more formal feedback and how you all capture those. And then additionally, what worked well that we want to sustain. So maybe there's and beyond the summer. So something that we can bring into the school year program, you know, an activity that worked really well, or just the way, just a slight shift even in something different, that you can say, hey, you know what, let's try that grouping, that student grouping over in the regular program year two, whatever it may be. As Camden mentioned too, of course, celebrating those successes. What a key moment too, because we do need to be proud of a lot of the great work that's happened. And we certainly don't want to miss those opportunities to say, hey, you know what, this was a big undertaking. And so being able to have those great wins, right? It's always exciting to get to celebrate that. And then as well, sharing best practices with your staff, the schools that you work with, the teachers, and the family. So being able to share that through many different means, right? It may be something like the video. It may be a quick one pager with some great visuals that just say, you know, how do we want to be able to tell folks the great work that we're doing as well, and bring more kids in so that we can continue to share that and bring that to others as well. And then also using the data and what you learned to inform planning. So again, it's also just really thinking about what, you know, if you were collecting a different kind of data this summer based on an activity, what adjustments might we make in how we collect that, or what data we collect, and then how can that inform the way that we do this process, this continuous improvement throughout the school year as well. So let's begin diving into your summer planner. We're gonna, you know, really start thinking about next summer. I mean, it really does happen that quickly, and you know, being able to think about you know, looking at our data, including those program measures and outcomes, doing all this to be able to reflect on the work that was done, and, you know, like I said, what worked, what didn't work, what could be adjusted. And that it's always a great opportunity there to, you know, as we continue that growth and progress over time, and being able to communicate with your whole team about, okay, hey, you know, here's some things we saw, even with your new staff coming into the new school year, right? Here's some things that we saw have worked really well, right? So how can we then, you know, use that data to be able to show those positive outcomes that are happening, or see places where we might need to adjust? So lastly, we'll determine through this process the updates needed to your theory of action for next summer's program. So thinking about that logic model tab in your summer program planner. And of course, we'll also look, as Candace mentioned, having it tuned to tab 13 for the continuous improvement planner. Okay, so, you know, this is our sample continuous improvement planner that just shows what do all these things mean, right? Like when we talk about performance measures, you know, if you Google performance measures, right, it's something that can be done a lot of different ways. We focus specifically on the SMART goal way of doing that. And so, on that tab 13, right, being able to see, as you all have entered in your information about, okay, here's what is important to us, and this reflects what we're trying to do and the outcomes we're trying to achieve. Here's how we're going to then measure this. So what that measurement tool is, and who's going to be helping to run this work, and who's going to be collecting the data to track it, which groups are we focusing on, and then that time frame overall, right? To be able to say, okay, and here's the outcomes that we ended up with. So as we reflect, we want you to think about some of these questions. And I'd love for y'all just to chime in. So what issues did you have with collecting data? Was there anything that you realized, okay, we're going to adjust this for future, or something wasn't available that you thought would be, to be able to show those strong outcomes you were hoping for? Also, did your performance measures help to determine your actual outcomes? Would you change anything like that measurement tool? Was there a new one that you would like to try for next year? Maybe something that you realize, oh, okay, if we're trying to get student feedback for this age group, we might need to do it a little bit different based on a quick smiley faces or whatever it may be, right? Depending on the group. As well, did you meet your outcomes? And if not, we always kind of have this sense of, okay, well, here's something we can try maybe next time, right? We know in working with you all that you're always forward thinking as well. And then what changes could you make to your performance measures, your outcomes, your data collection procedures in general? So I know I asked a lot of things there, but I'll pause, and I can also drop those into the chat. And again, just feel free to come off mute.
Can you drop the questions in the chat?
Yes.
I'm actually home recovering from surgery, so I need to see it.
No, of course. And I was trying to do that myself, and I could not get it to open for some reason. But I certainly will. The first question, though, was, did you have any issues collecting data?
I can speak for Zion's house. I think that during the summer, we did not have any issues collecting data. I think for overall programmatically, with our leadership team coming in during the summer, we are trying to make sure that we do the data from, beginning of the school year throughout. So that was a struggle that we're going to be working on going forward for this school year. But I think overall during the summer, even with the transition, we were able to collect the data that we needed. Um, what's the other question?
Oh, Jess, you're on mute, Jess.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, Candace, are you able to drop them in? For some reason, I am not able to copy and paste them in.
Absolutely, I can.
Technology. It always chooses to do its own thing.
The
It'll work
second
fine as
one
soon
that-
as we close down Zoom, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes.
no problem. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, and so then the other questions were focused on thinking about the performance measures. Did they help you in helping you and determine those actual outcomes you were looking for? Anything you'd like to change on your measurement tool, or other ways that you were able to collect this data, or the types of data?
Got it. So I think that for the performance measures, I like the tools that we did use. And that is one thing that I did want to add, that for as far as the reflection part, with gathering the responses from the students. So I like your idea of using, like, for the smaller kids, smiley faces and frowny faces, to gather feedback from the actual students. And I think that's something that Bishop Parker and I discussed, about getting a little more what's the word I want to use here? A little more documented data and feedback from the students because, somebody long ago in 21st century said that children vote with their feet. So I'm like, attendance is up, the kids are coming, they love it here. But to actually have the feedback in a more data-driven way, I think would be absolutely helpful. So that is one thing that I would like to incorporate more going forward. Um, I'm looking at the questions again. So yes, changing that. Changes could make to performance measure outcome calculation. Yeah, I think our general procedures for data collection and performance measures have been they were good, pretty consistent. We'll be making some changes just from the leadership change, but I think overall, like I said before, just being able to have this in one place was definitely a reminder for me. Because I think when you're doing something for a while, you get kind of used to doing things and it's there, but then being able to say, like, oh yeah, I do need to make sure that we have this documented, even though we know it's already going on, right? So I think that that was very helpful there. So I think overall, as far as the continuous improvement, we were able to use the tool to make sure that we stayed organized with that. And like you guys said, sharing that information with the team, like why it's important to make sure you take the attendance by 9:05, right? So sharing the importance of things like that was definitely something that was important throughout the summer. So, but overall, I think we did pretty well with collecting the data and then actually meeting those goals.
Something that you said too was we've heard it like consistently the last week or two is being new or having a new fresh set of eyes take a look at what you've done to kind of, like you said, we sometimes you get so used to doing things a certain way that it's helpful to have somebody from the outside kind of come in and take a look at what your tool is, for example, or your time frame or your target groups to kind of maybe pick holes in some of those things that you're constantly doing to see if there is a better way to do it.
Absolutely.
Like wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then I wanted to also check in with Tyshawn and get your thoughts on these questions as well.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what she said, especially about finding better and like more streamlined ways to survey the students and get that feedback directly from them. Uh, we did collect student data, and so we do have it, but just thinking about better ways to collect that data, ways that would allow us to get a little bit more detail out of them, is definitely something we're going to be moving forward. And then also tying in with some things that we talked about last week when we were in Raleigh, we had like a training on data culture. Uh, the tool was really helpful at like a planning level for like at the top. Uh, but I think moving forward, it would be beneficial to the program as a whole if we shared this tool with our staff as well. So instead of just saying like, hey, I'm sharing this information with you from the top. No, like, hey, like, let's come in, all sit in the room together and look through the data and make sense of it that way, and really investing the team in that sense more into the process as a whole rather than just sort of uh, communicating from the top, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting some buy-in as well, right? Letting their voice be heard. There may be things that, y'all hadn't necessarily thought about, right? There's always that opportunity to learn more from new ways of looking at things. And so I love that. I think that's a great idea, right? We say we're going to student voice. And so getting that staff voice in there as well is great.
Well, and something too, Tyshawn, that made me think when you said that was kind of giving that ownership to your site level staff, because as Dr. Hamilton mentioned, we met your site coordinator and she was on top of things, right? Like she knew how to run that program. She knew who was coming and going, and it's giving them a voice as well, right? Like saying, even pulling in your instructors or your after school staff and saying, for your activities that you're overseeing, for example, I want you to come up with your goal, your SMART goal. I want you to come up with your measurement tool. And, kind of having them walk through, the planner, something like this, if it's helpful, but especially this tab, so that you're not the one having to do it all, right? But you're also empowering them to take ownership of the goals in the beginning and then the outcomes of their specific activities that they're overseeing. So just kind of another way to think about it. Like as PDs, we always think, oh my gosh, I have to do it all by myself. And we don't. And when you have, really high quality staff, you can give some of that responsibility to them to take the load off of your shoulders, but also it empowers them to continue learning and growing too. So we are going to dive in just a minute, a little bit more to your particular outcomes. But Jess, I wanted to see if there was anything else that you wanted to wrap up just in terms of the planner and the process.
No, and I think overall, just as I mentioned, right, the outcomes and did using those performance measures to identify how you want to, or what data you need to collect and who's going to be responsible for that and those kinds of things. So just thinking about that process overall, and I know y'all mentioned some very specific things about using that data, but anything in terms of your performance measures or your outcomes that anything else in general that y'all would like to share any feedback on? All right. Well, maybe we will we'll bring up a few of these and kind of engage in a conversation about it. This this slide was here from last time. You've seen it before. It just kind of gave you the example as Jess was mentioning, like what does a good quality performance measure, a SMART goal, if you will, what does that look like? What are some potential tools we can use in staff and science? So this was just kind of an example to show you. But what we want to do next is really pull up your planner, your theory of action, and kind of talk through it. And we'll do just one at a time. We also, during this kind of next phase, we want to offer you some of our insights and our feedback based on what we saw while we were there. So we will start with Zion House, since that was the first place that we went to on July 23rd. We went to Ayden, North Carolina, and were greeted by the lovely staff there. What a beautiful facility you all had, and just you could see just the excitement and the buzz across the facility when we got there, which was so great to see. So just kind of looking back though, what we wanted to do is just level set on what your original goal or your theory of action was. So as Michelle was working with you all on the theory of action and the logic model, you can kind of see how well you laid out your plans here. And the theory of action, I think, was the most critical because it drove programming and everything else. But you all said if you create safe and engaging summer programs that provide evidence-based reading and math instruction with additional enrichment activities, then our students will improve their reading and math performance, they'll increase their attendance and engagement, and they'll have fun. That's the bottom line. They'll have fun and they'll be exposed to real-world experiences. So just kind of walking through, again, very clearly you all identified your needs. And in this case, of course, it was reading, math, and ongoing enrichment. You set out what your inputs or your resources were. You talked about which activities you would be pursuing. And then again, I think a critical part of this logic model process is really thinking about your outputs. We always talk about participation, we talk about dosage and frequency. And if your original plan was to serve those 40 students for 90 minutes at 4 days a week, were you able to do that? And so what your intended outcomes, and we'll just kind of look at the first one, which, dealt with reading, but it was similar for all the others, was really that this increased scope and success of reading programs by increased attendance and improved student outcomes. So what we want to know from you guys as well is, do you feel like you achieved those outcomes? Looking back in your planner, this is what you kind of said, again, going back to what your overall goals were for the Summer Learning Initiative. You had a focus on reading, math, attendance, and behavior. You focused in on your measurement tools using pre and post assessments for those reading and math outcomes or measures.
You talked about who was responsible for doing this. Your PD and your site coordinator were the ones that were going to be responsible for collecting data for your targeted age group. You talked about your time frame as well, so that, the first day and the last day of the summer programming. So based on what you did in your planner, and I don't know if you all have gone back and updated the planner with your actual outcomes. If you have not, I would encourage you to do that, because then, as you all have said, like, everything's nicely laid out there. Not only will this serve as, looking back for you, but looking forward as well. So planning into next year and taking a look. And Miss Boston or Mr. Parker, if you want to kind of share, maybe let's talk about the reading or any of these, but can you share whether you met your intended outcomes or not?
Right. So with regards to attendance and behavior, I know we met those goals. I don't have the percentages. We'll be working on that when I get back in the office. But we definitely saw an improvement in attendance. We compared that to the students that were with us during the school year. Um, and their attendance during the school year versus attendance during the summer, as well as with the behavior. So we're fortunate enough to have the staff from the school year that stayed on for the summer. So they were able to verbally tell us, since myself and the site coordinator were new, about improvements in behavior that they were seeing based off of some of the new behavior models that we kind of showed them and implemented while we were there. Or starting there in the summer. As far as the reading and the math, we had positive reports from parents that were, pick up, drop off, and then through our class dojo as well. So we'll be looking at the actual data when I get back. So the end of summer camp, I went out for surgery. So it's some of those data-driven pieces that I have to catch up on as soon as I get back in the office. But overall, just looking at how we collected data and actually looking at, student work and speaking to parents and the actual instructors, we saw growth in the student work. And it was really fun to look at. Again, I hate to keep saying it, but since I wasn't there during the school year, it was fun and rewarding to look at the feedback from the parents and the tutors that had worked with the students during the school year, to be able to say, they started at this point and, now they're reading, or now they're able to, they have a expanded vocabulary now. So I know that we've met those goals, but it's going back and looking at the numbers more closely.
Well, and this is perfect timing. What I said, I know you said you were out, but even, had you been there, it's so hard getting closing up summer and getting the school year up and running. So even though, here's what they always say, summer starts in September, right? Like, your summer planning for next year, but you're also reflecting. And so even if you haven't had to have like the time to, actually look at the data, if you haven't had the time to truly celebrate yet with your staff, this is a good time to do that when you get back, as you're saying, like revisiting the data and like making that be kind of the kickoff for planning for next year. But taking that time too to celebrate what you just shared and what you saw and what the kids saw and what their parents shared and what the teachers shared, being able to celebrate that with your staff and even with your students, I think it's going to be so critical. And like I said, it's perfect timing. So even if that happens in October and, November, you're well ahead of the game from last year, right? But you're also taking the time to really dive into that data a little more deeply, like you shared. I don't want to discount the informal data, because I think that is also critical. And so you mentioned that, like, kind of the informal data you got from the kids, attendance was higher. The informal data you got from your staff, that's important. But coupling that with the numerical data, with that quantitative data, is it's just icing on the cake. So as you think about this, I would encourage you to take both pieces of data types, quantitative and qualitative, and really use that in updating your planner as well.
Yes, ma'am.
So what we wanted to do next was just share some of what we saw were the glows and grows at Zion's house. As I mentioned, the just being there and being on site was amazing. I'd never been to Aden, North Carolina. When you all have told us it's a very rural program, we saw it for ourselves. And I can't tell you how much that helps just give perspective when we um, are developing content or training or having conversations with you. Being in your community really helps give us that perspective. And so, as I mentioned, just definitely wanted to share some of those glows with you, and the glows and the grows, because we think both are important. And I always appreciate having an outside opinion on both positive things and things that we think could be improved. So I hope that you all will take this the same way, as these are our outside reflections as we were there, completing those observation forms, working with our evaluators. Wanted to just share a few of these highlights. So I know Michelle mentioned this in her chat, but the Zion store was amazing. I think you all saw us posted on the video. When we saw it, our eyes just lit up. Not only because it was a beautiful little space that you had carved out in your facility, but it was so welcoming and inviting. And then all of the cool stuff that you had there available for kids, like that's exactly the kind of supplies and snacks and toys, like that's exactly what they want. And you displayed it so beautifully, like you could tell that it was an incentive for the kids. And so one thing that I love though about this, and this is going to go back to your one of your goals and in improving student behavior, you directly tied that goal to this particular, not that it's an activity, but to this the Zion store. You applied that directly. You made sure that this was an incentive-based learning um, that the students could earn based on good behavior, if you will. And also, in addition to that, you connected it to learning. So financial literacy pieces were critical in this. You were giving kids real world application on how to use their money. And I think, Miss Boston, you might have been the one that shared the story of the little, I think it was a little boy that had some behavior issues and was taking loans out, or other students were giving
Yes.
loans to the student. I thought, wow, I mean, what a smart kid, right? Trying to figure out the ways around it, but that is a true to life need. So that was one that we truly appreciated, the Zion store. So kudos to you all for that. The other thing I would say is we really saw the level and the amount of work done with intentionally in designing those activities that you did. So the activities were not only hands-on, what we really saw was, you guys were embedding what you had hoped to teach them in terms of reading. That's what we saw when we were there, was the reading activity. That you hoped to embed, or you hoped to infuse those lessons like comprehension into the activities. So the activity that we saw, of course, was the Blueberries with Sal, I think was the name of the book. I don't know if you could hear it 100% on the video, but you could hear the teachers talking about, what does this mean? What does that mean? What do we mean when we say this? We saw that staff was writing words on the wall or on the board when students didn't know the meaning of the word. We saw you do more than just allow students to have the fun cooking activity, which was a lot of fun, and the pancakes were really good. But we saw you all infusing some of those reading techniques that they needed to know and understand. We saw you do a little math in there, talking about the different measures and what does it mean to half a measure, or going back to the recipe, how it was ordered in the handout, taking the students back to each of those steps, asking the students what were these supplies and what were these materials, what were they used for. So it was more than just let's now cook blueberries because that's fun, but you really were intentional about the way that you embedded some of those academics into that enrichment opportunity to achieve your literacy goal. And then the other thing that we really loved was how you included each and every student in the process. And I wondered, when we got there, I was like, especially in the room that I was in, I'm like, oh my goodness, how are they gonna get all those kids up here at one time to do the cooking, which is what they really wanted to do. But the instructors in that class, just each child, they gave an opportunity to go up there either one at a time or two at a time and engage in each part of the process. So it was almost like a team effort, but every student got the opportunity to engage. And I thought that was just a really nice way for you all to be able to do it in an organized way, but thinking about, the space that you had. And then again, what we could really tell was the intentionality of your instructors and how they made, and you all made the connections across the project. And you could tell, like, not only were the instructors, not only did they know that reading comprehension was something that you all had focused on and wanted to work on, and literacy was one of your goals. So they embedded that intentionally throughout. But you could also even see, like, from across the facility, the ladies that were working in the cafeteria or in the kitchen, like, they knew what you were working on and why. Your site coordinators knew that. Mr. Parker was there and engaging and having fun. You all knew what the goal was, and that was obvious. We could see that as we came in and as we were doing our observations. And again, just making those connections back to your logic model and your theory of action, we could see that very well. So kudos to you all for the globes. Jess, I'm going to turn it over to you for some of the grows.
Yes, absolutely. And as Candace mentioned, right, there were so many wonderful things that we saw while we were there. And knowing, of course, like I said, we go through our own continuous improvement process. So we'll be asking you to give us our glows and grows essentially right at the end and the process overall. But as we think about just generally speaking, there were some different ways of doing things between the different age groups, which we would expect to see, right? Absolutely. And as some of those older kids get to where they may not be as eager to dive into some of the things in the same way some of the younger kids are, right? So thinking about how we might be able to, from an age appropriate perspective, bring more interaction with those students and having them to either work together in a small group or being able to ask each other questions even. Being able to think about maybe even creative writing, right? Since literacy was a key focus area. So other ways that beyond like a worksheet that may be able to still help students as they're building those skills to also be able to engage and think about some different ways to do that. Additionally, just thinking about student response time, giving students an opportunity to be able to really think through, right? They say that silence, right, of the sit and wait and just quiet, especially as the kids get older, the uncomfortableness will drive somebody to respond, hopefully, right, is the idea. But being able to allow them to show what they know, essentially, and so that even if one student doesn't know the answer, right, it's okay to if their guess is not correct, that's okay, right? And giving them that opportunity to just learn to use that voice a bit, as well as opportunities for questioning. So some of those critical thinking skills around higher order questions and how we can encourage students to work together. Maybe they work as a group together and then ask each other questions, right? What questions would they have come up with? What didn't they necessarily understand and want to learn more about, whatever that might look like specifically. And then additionally, the last thing is just tailoring the instruction to those developmental stages. So I talked just a little bit about that earlier, but again, being able to think about different ways that they can work together, that as they get if you're trying to work as well on writing opportunities, right? So I mentioned a creative writing, or maybe it's even using grammar in a way, right? Being able to build in those different ways as they're going through the 4th, 5th grade and such, so where they can really show what they're learning and continue to develop those skills.
Thanks, Jess. I did want to ask the state staff, Wendy. I know Susan had to hop off and certainly hope she feels better. But Wendy, was there anything that you wanted to share, or Dr. Hamilton, any glows and grows from your side when we were there on site?
This is Wendy. Actually, mainly the things that you all saw are the things that I saw. I think especially starting from scratch with a program is challenging to say the least. Thankfully, Nisha has had some experience and has been able to assist Zion's house as they've moved forward. And Mr. Parker has learned an awful lot in a short period of time, as have the staff. It's a lot. It's a steep learning curve if it's the first time you are interacting with a grant of this complexity. So I just want to say, they've done a great job and just continue to keep moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nisha or Mr. Parker, any questions or comments?
Yes, I have. Thank you for the glows. It's good to know that the work that was put in with the store, the activity design, and the connection piece did land, and you guys did see that. And I think with the grows, I would 100% agree with the grows. I think that, like Miss Wendy said, Zion, this was Zion's house first. Rumble with 21st Century, and it is a lot to take on in the very beginning. And I think that I definitely agree with the grows because I don't think that there was a lot of training and learning how to diversify, teaching strategies with your groups, in particular with the older students, like you mentioned, Miss Jessica. And that was definitely something that I did notice throughout the summer. But diving in, it was kind of like okay, we're gonna work with what we have and do the best with what we can here now, and then going forward we know what areas for the staff that stay on with us during the school year that we need to focus on some additional instruction with them on how to implement some of those strategies, because it was, as you were given the grows and you were talking about I lost my train of thought. You were talking about well, I call them extended lessons. So where you have the base of the activity, like the activity sheets that we had, but then extending those lessons into something else. So that's something that I know I personally teach the instructors that we have, but we weren't able to do that in that short of a time with coming on with the program. So I definitely agree with the grows, and that's something that we'll be working on going forward.
That's wonderful. And again, like, we've said kudos to you all because this was your first go into it, and you can do nothing but grow from here, and taking all of this data and this experience and participating and moving that into the next several years of your grant. So okay, we're gonna shift on over to Charlotte. We had a nice drive from Aden to Charlotte, Jessica and I, and we were able to visit Freedom Within Walls on July 24th. Just kind of looking in as well, diving into your theory of action, and again, kind of seeing where did you start? What did you want to do with your summer program when you started this process? And you all said if we create an engaging summer program that offers physically and mentally stimulating activities, in addition to math and reading support, our students will improve in their academic performance, their physical and mental well-being, and maintain consistent program attendance. So Tyshawn, you guys did a great job of setting forth not only your theory of action, but also your needs. And again, your programs both in North Carolina focused specifically on reading and on math, knowing the needs and, kind of using your local research, your local data and research to understand what your needs were. But you also had, I'm going to go to the next slide here so you can see the second part here. You also had goals that related to behavior. So we were looking at suspension rates and behaviors in general. And then you were also looking at, making sure that the students have those enrichment activities that students wanted to participate in. Because as Nacia said, students vote with their feet. And especially the older kids, we know that they certainly do. And so you all did a great job of kind of laying out what your inputs were, what your resources were going to be, not only your school day teaching and staff, but your materials such as, and your curriculum such as iReady and having books on hand. You knew how long and how often you wanted your students to participate. And you also had small student to teacher or instructor ratios. So you were, looking at your 50 students participating in these activities 5 weeks, 5 days a week for 5 weeks. And if all of these things happened and these things went into place, would you then achieve your overall outcomes, which again is to either improve the percentage points of the reading and math, and then again, some different ones here based on student behavior and really being thoughtful about the enrichment activities that you were doing and making sure that those were what students wanted to participate in. So just, I know again, this is an older form of the planner. Tyshawn, I'm not sure if you were able to kind of go in and look at and complete, these parts of the planner that really talk to you about your tool, your staff, your target group, and your outcomes. And if you haven't, I would encourage you to go ahead and still do that because it could be a starting point for next year. But can you tell us a little bit about your outcomes and what you saw in terms of your goals?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I haven't had a chance to go back and fill out this last part. And I know a lot of the data is in 21 DC, so it's just a matter of sitting through and sifting through a lot of it and saying, okay, they were here on these days and that sort of thing. But from what I saw overall in terms of behaviors at the very least, it seemed that by the end of the program, we were having fewer behavioral incidences. Uh, Unfortunately, I'm not sure if that's partly because of the programming itself or partly because some of the students who we were having the most issues with after conversations with their parents ended up withdrawing them. So that might have skewed our data a little bit in terms of behavior outcomes. As far as like enrichment participation, we surveyed the parents and we surveyed the students to figure out what they wanted, and we definitely made sure to invite those programs back, and the students seem to really enjoy it. We're going to try to work on this year, bringing in some of the things that the students suggested and said, hey, we'd really love to see things like this. So that's something that we're working on and looking forward to.
Wonderful. And I love how you ask questions, especially about your data, because, the data is always only as good as it is going to be. So even going like, okay, even if this was our plan to measure or look at this, was it, a result of the program or was it skewed data? So Tyshawn, I think it's always important to question your data and, whether it's a positive or a negative outcome, it's important to question your data. And then again, like I said, a lot of this is just for you to kind of set the stage to be able to improve for next year and make those adjustments as needed. So with our site observations, like I said, I know we weren't able to meet with you, Tyshawn, but we met with your lovely staff, and we came in at a time that was like drop-off time, and it was moving and flowing and going, and people were all over the place, as well as getting breakfast ready for kids. So we came in at probably the busiest part of the day, but that said, we still saw a lot of great things. So Jess, over to you for the glows.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of the, exciting things was just seeing that engagement, with the teachers and how they were engaging the students as well through that reflective questioning, to really encourage students to be curious and ask questions, to really think deeper about those different topics. So that was, of course, great to see as well. And then additionally, in connecting to across concepts and subjects and bringing a whole lesson together, kind of closing that loop, for example, thinking about in one of the observations I was in where they were started off with integrating the technology with a video and then weaved in those concepts throughout the lesson and then circle, kind of at that end wrapped it up with a similar type of closure on that same topic and really then diving deeper into that one video that they had watched. And so just, being able to make that connection as well. And then in the next one too, another type of connection, those personal connections. So bringing in their own element as an educator, connecting with their own grandkids or their own children or other things that just ultimately reflected and were engaging to the students too, so that they could help sharing their personal stories, help the students also make their own connections as well. And being just, I think, relatable in a lot of ways in that way too. And then finally, I mentioned effective use of technology, but really it was a nice way of kind of sprinkling in. I know, especially in a lot of places right now, right? The idea is trying to pull back a bit on technology. And, but I don't think it was one of those situations where it was overused by any means. It was very much, meaningful in the way that it helped connect those learning experiences. And Candace, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, so just kind of in that same vein, I know we are about a minute left, but if you guys can hang on just a second to finish this out, and we don't have a whole lot left to finish, so definitely want to give Tyshawn his grows and give him the opportunity, and Dr. Hamilton the opportunity to share as well. But what I would say, these first two are really kind of together. So it was content integration and academic embedding. This is kind of something that we saw that we would just love to share with you, Tyshawn, because there were activities happening that we felt like could have gone just a little bit deeper in integrating some content in there and really embedding some of that academic learning. So I'll give you an example. We saw it was the kids with the older classroom or the older students. They were doing a bingo activity, and we felt like the activity was great. The kids were engaged. They really connected with the instructor in that classroom. You could tell he was kind of younger and he was really hip, and like you could just tell that they really liked him and they connected well. So what we thought is, they were playing bingo and they were talking about vocabulary. Again, going back to your goal of reading and working on that. But one of the things we felt like he could have done better is to kind of introduce the vocabulary. So he was just like saying the word, but kind of going into that higher order thinking, asking the kids, what does that word mean? Or use it in a sentence. I think the word, and I don't know how I remembered this, but the word was protagonist. They were talking about some of those literary terms, and the word was protagonist. And so he could have said like, hey, use this in a sentence, or do you know what this means? Or then offered the definition and embedding that into the bingo activity. So really just kind of the opportunity to strengthen that integration of the academic content into the fun, engaging activity, especially because it aligned with what your goal was in terms of literacy. And then the other, or the last we'll just say is collaborative planning. And I know when we spoke to your site coordinator, again, she told us that she wasn't able to attend all of these sessions for the Targeted Summer Learning Initiative because of timing and her responsibilities. But you could see her willingness to learn and want to know and share the information. So the only thing that we would just encourage you to do is, now that you've been through this, Tyshawn, is extending kind of this level of planning to your site level staff so that, they truly understand. And as we talked about earlier, they can really share that ownership and share the why and take some of that responsibility off of you and getting all of your folks on the same page about the planning effort. So So those were just a few of the growths that we would share. Would love to open it up to Dr. Hamilton and or you, Tyshawn, to share anything additionally or ask any questions.
I certainly will defer to Tyshawn. I concur with going a little deeper, digging a little deeper and adding a little more rigor to the lesson. So I'm not going to reiterate that, but just to your point, I'll defer to Tyshawn.
Thank you for that. I'm definitely going to share this with my staff. This has been super helpful. And I definitely agree with the last grow on the collaborative planning. We touched on that earlier about really wanting to bring more people to the table. I think one of the interesting things about our program, it's been both really helpful, but has also created its own challenges, is that the majority of our staff are the daytime instructors for the students. And so they see them, they build those relationships, they have that rapport that you definitely saw. But it also makes it difficult sometimes to get everybody in a room. It's like, hey, we can't meet during the day because you're teaching your own classes and you have your own responsibilities. And so that limits our ability to have those collaborative sessions and to integrate that feedback. But there are teacher work days, and not every teacher work day is an actual teacher work day in the sense like they have to be on campus and that sort of thing. And so for this year, I've already given them notice like, hey, expect every teacher work day, you'll have something to do. Even if we're not physically meeting, I may like send you some homework to work on at home and like, hey, here, like check out this video, or like, here's something that I want you guys to really work on so we can reflect and that sort of thing. And so I think moving forward, being able to share this feedback with them and saying like, hey, like these activities were great. Let's just take it a little bit deeper and tying that into, hey, like here are our goals, right? Let's connect them a little bit better. Because as we mentioned earlier, a lot of the planning was happening at the top level, but admittedly the why and the reasoning behind it didn't get shared to those lower levels as well. So definitely thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
And sure, absolutely. And again, this is all a learning experience, and I think you all, it's a great problem to have that you have school day instructors who can stay in your after school program, but you've already found ways around how to kind of get through some of those difficulties. So we just again want to thank you all so much. Thank you for hanging out a little bit after. Apologies for going over a little bit. But just wanted to again just thank you all for your participation in this, and know that as part of our evaluation for the NTAC, we set aside what we call space for impact stories. So we will have 2 stories of impact of this initiative in your programs, using the data that we collected throughout this initiative, as well as when we were on site. And that kind of coupled with the video, for example, in Zion, we will encourage you all to use to tell your stories to your local folks and to the parents and to your students. And at the state level, of course, I know you all will share the information with your state level staff who wants and needs to hear this. So those should be coming out hopefully by the end of this month, and we will certainly send them to you and share them with you so that you can kind of have in writing your story of impact. And then lastly, just wanted to remind you all that it doesn't have to stop here, that there is a space for you all in the Knowledge Network. In the event you want to have conversations with your peers, ask questions, kind of figure out like, okay, what do we do now? Or what did we say about this or that? So please do feel free to know that it's there and engage with us through that process. And then last but not least, I do thank you all for your feedback as well on the feedback form. We critically use this information to make changes and updates. And as you all have heard, we're going to be expanding this work in North Carolina for all the other grantees. So if there's anything that we can do to improve the process, please let us know. And as always, you can see here how to keep in touch with us, how to get a hold of us. You all know us and you have our contact information, so feel free to reach out at any point. And thank you so much for being here and for your participation. Happy to hang out if you all have any additional questions or needs.
Thank you guys. I did want to